Don't rock the jukebox. The 90s may be seen by a lot of people as the last great decade for country music, but it wasn't a great sound of music that came to Nashville overnight. Many years artists paid their dues in the decades before the 90s, and the artists from the past decade would lay the groundwork for the sound to come. With country music losing its edge in the early 80s, many felt that pop country was the future of the country sound. As we look at each year from the 80s to the end of the 1990s, we find that pop country was a dividing influence on the sound of the 90s, as well as the raw country sounds of the past. The artists that grew up in the pop country era would take sounds, mixing it with old style country for a new neo-pop country that was true to its roots and made a lasting impression for years to come.
All right.
Before the start of the 1980s, the 70s ended with some hope that those longing for a return of the country roots was heading in the right direction. In 1979, Willie Nelson would walk away with the CMA Entertainer of the Year. This outlaw icon was far from the radio pop country dominating FM stations. He was born in 1933 and by the early 1960s had become a successful songwriter in Nashville, writing such hits for artists like Patsy Cline, Billy Walker, and Roy Orbison, just to name a few. However, by the end of the 60s, Willie had got fed up with Nashville, moved to Texas, and started following his own style of music, the type of music that would become known as outlaw country a few years later. In 1973, Willie's album Shotgun Willie was loved by the music critics, but failed to have much success in sales. When he teamed up with another outlaw singer, Waylon Jennings, for the 1975 album Red-Headed Strangers, the first single from the album, Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain, was a smash hit, giving Willie Nelson his first #1 single.
In twilight, though I see her. Thank you very much. Blue eyes crying in the rain.
Success would follow, not just for Willie, but for Waylon and the outlaw sound. Nashville, who wanted little to do with the Outlaws, now found themselves eating at their feet to work with them. Another outlaw of country music would end 1979 with the CMA Single of the Year. That single, Devil Went Down to Georgia, would become one of the most popular songs of the 70s. The Charlie Daniels Band was far from pop country, but they were able to cross over with this fiddling masterpiece about the devil getting into a fiddling contest with a young boy.
And he said, I'll start this show, and fire flew from his fingertips as he rosined up his bow. And he pulled his bow across the strings and it made an evil hiss. Then a band of demons joined in and it sounded something like this.
Charlie Daniels was born in North Carolina to teenage parents. His family would move to Valdosta, Georgia soon after he started school as a child, but then back to North Carolina a few years later. Early in his life, he would be infected with measles, which would cause him to need glasses for most of his life. That would also lead to him being bullied at school. He started his music career with a bluegrass band called Misty Mountain Boys in the 1950s. At this time, he was already a well-trained guitar, fiddle, banjo, and mandolin player. By the 1960s, he was performing rock and roll music and started his own band, the Rockets. During this time, he was starting to find love with jazz and country music. In 1964, Elvis would record one of the songs he'd written called It Hurts Me.
It hurts me to see him treat you the way that he does. Oh, it hurts me to see you sit and cry.
Soon after this, Daniel moved to Nashville to work as a session player. During that time, he got to record with Bob Dylan for his 1969 album, Nashville Skylight. This would also lead to a tour with Dylan as part of his band. In 1970, Charlie Daniels would release a solo album without much success, but that would lead to him forming the Charlie Daniels Band in 1974. This led to a #9 single on the Billboard Top 100 charts, Uneasy Rider.
He said, now you just stay right where you're at. I didn't bother to tell the darn fool that I sure as hell didn't have any place else to go.
Although his following singles wouldn't break the charts, most of them became huge hits at his concerts and with his growing fan base. Such songs as The South's Gonna Do It Again and Long Hair Country Boy would be a must-play song during his live shows. But he did reach number 1 in 1979 with The Devil Went Down to Georgia. However, pop country was still having its take on country. Female Vocalist of the Year would be handed out to Barbara Mandrell, an artist that was well-versed in mixing pop sounds with the country life. The male artist went to Kenny Rogers. Like Barbara Mandrell, Kenny was able to bring a pop sound to country, but also give fans some more pure country sounds for the decade, like the CMA's 1979 Song of the Year, The Gambler.
You got to know when to hold up, know when to fold up, know when to walk away, and know when to run.
He first had a huge hit with his band The First Edition back in 1968, where the psychedelic rock hit Just Dropped In.
Yeah, oh yeah, what condition my condition was in.
I pushed my soul in a deep dark hole, then I followed it.
When they broke up in 1975, Kenny went out on his own as a solo artist. He would have a few minor hits until 1977, when he had a major hit with Lucille, reaching number 1 on the pop charts and selling over 500 million copies.
You picked a fine time to leave me, Lucille. I hear you. With 4 hungry children and a crop in the field.
After that, hits just kept rolling in for Kenny Rogers, and he quickly became a household name. Not only would he win CMA's Top Male Artist of 1978, his song The Gambler would pick up Song of the Year, and that album, The Gambler, would win Best Album.
This is really nice, but in all fairness, this award should, and if there's not a duplicate for this, I promise you, Larry Butler will get this one because he produced that whole album. Thank you very much.
That year would see new artists take home the award for male and female new vocalists. The female award went to Christy Lane. Even if she had been around singing since the 60s, she really didn't make her impact until the 1978 album Love Lies, followed by a 1979 album Simple Little Words. Christy would move over to become a well-known and respected Christian singer as the 80s started, but the male winner would carry on the country sound to the top of the charts throughout the 80s. John Conley was born on a tobacco farm in Kentucky. He would grow up singing tenor in a barbershop quartet after learning to play the guitar as a child. He would even land a job as a mortician before finding success on the radio. That early success on the radio was thanks to his DJ job at WQXE in Elizabethtown, Kentucky. He would then move to WLAC in Nashville. In 1978, he would hit the top 5 with his huge hit, Rose-Colored Glasses.
I don't know why I keep on believing you need me when you prove so many times that it ain't true.
It was followed by 2 number 1 songs, Lady Lay Down and The Backside of 30.
I'm on the backside of 30 and back on my own. An empty apartment don't feel like home. On the backside.
As the 70s ended, it was clear there was music for the pop country fans and those looking for a more traditional sound of country music. The first number 1 of the 80s would stay in that place for 3 weeks. Kenny Rogers' Coward of the County was a dark tale of a young man who finally had enough. It was the right mixture of Kenny Rogers' pop sound with a traditional country story.
Consider him the coward of the county. Never stood one single time to prove the county wrong. Mama calling Tommy.
In March of 1980, the country music's famous Grand Ole Opry returned to television as it aired on PBS Live on Saturday night. This gave many country fans a look at the new artists that they have only heard on radio, along with some of the country music's biggest legends, such as Dale Reeves, Bill Monroe, Hank Snow, Roy Acuff, Minnie Pearl, and so many more. But the Grand Ole Opry had little impact on the growth of country music compared to a film that would be released in the summer of 1980. John Travolta was starred in Urban Cowboy. The huge success of the film would give country music its biggest mainstream revival in history. Some would even say the film saved country music. Even the hippie city slickers from the big city disco was putting on cowboy hats and heading over to a local western bar to ride mechanical bulls and cut a dance on the dance floor. Many of the movie's bar scenes took place in Mickey Gilley's club, called Gilley's. Mickey, the cousin of rock and roll legend Jerry Lee Lewis, had broken into country music after 4 #1 singles in a row, starting with Room Full of Roses and ending the streak with City Lights. Many country singers will appear in the film. Also featured in the film was Johnny Lee and Charlie Daniels, among others. As successful as it was, and as big of an impact it made on country music, that doesn't mean it didn't come with a price tag. The Urban Cowboy craze has been criticized for turning the outlaw country music into more of a soft-core commercial country music scene. The Urban Cowboy craze helped singers like Kenny Rogers, Dolly Parton, Johnny Lee, and Janie Freaky take over the country mainstream airwaves. These artists was believed by some to have a more mellow, soft sound compared to Willie and Waylon and the outlaw singers of the 70s. Good or bad, the Urban Cowboy craze and its sound was a huge success, bringing in huge record sales for artists and having a huge impact on the country music market. The soundtrack to the film would give at least 5 top 10 singles. One of the artists that really benefited from the Urban Cowboy craze was Johnny Lee, who scored his first #1 in 1980 with Looking for Love. The song would even make it to #5 on the Billboard's Hot 100 chart. His follow-up single, 1 in a Million, would also land at #1.
I was looking for love in all the wrong places, looking for love in too many faces, searching for eyes, looking for traces of what I'm dreaming of.
Lee was born in Texas and grew up on a dairy farm. He started his own rock and roll band as a teenager, calling it Johnny Lee and the Roadrunners. He would then enlist in the U.S. Navy and serve on a guided missile cruiser. After the Navy, he would find work at Mickey Gilley's club. He would work there for 10 years trying to start his country music career. His #1 hit, Looking for Love, would appear on the Urban Cowboy soundtrack, giving it a large reach to more than just the country audience. Urban Cowboy wasn't the only country music-filled film to hit theaters in 1980. A few months earlier, the Loretta Lynn biopic Coal Miner's Daughter would be a smash hit.
Ladies and gentlemen, make welcome Miss Loretta Lynn.
I'm getting run to death out there. I need somebody to take care of me. Woman, if you want to keep that arm, you better get it off of my husband.
In July, Willie Nelson would even appear on the big screen in Honeysuckle Rose, and the year would come to a close with the Dolly Parton classic 9 to 5.
Jane Fonda, Lily Tomlin, and Dolly Parton.
On the small screen, the variety show Hee Haw was still going strong, and Barbara Mandrell and the Mandrell sisters would hit with a primetime series. Waylon Jennings, who did the theme song for the CBS hit television show The Dukes of Hazzard, would take that theme song to the top of the country charts in November.
Never meaning no harm. Beats all you never saw. Been in trouble with the law since the day they was born.
The first year of the new decade was a huge year, bringing country music to many of those who swore they never would listen to it. Artists like Kenny Rogers, the Oak Ridge Boys, Ronnie Millsap, Conway Twitty, Eddie Rabbitt, George Jones, Ann Murray, and others would dominate the charts, not just with singles but with album sales. Actor-comedian George Burns would even score a #15 hit with I Wish I Was 18 Again. And another actor would have a hit song. Clint Eastwood teamed up with Merle Haggard for the #1 song, Barroom Buddies. But there was probably no song in 1980 that has gone on to influence the history of country music more than the song that hit #1 on July 5th. George Jones's He Stopped Loving Her Today would be an instant classic and be called by many as the best country song ever, and many saying it defines what country music is.
He stopped loving her today. They placed a wreath upon his door. Soon they'll carry him away. He stopped loving her today.
However, all the success in country music of 1980 didn't come with some loss. Both members of the Son of the Pioneers, Howard Farr and Bob Knoll, would pass away, as would the most successful truck-driving country artist, Red Savine.
And may God ride with you. 10-4. And goodbye.
1980 would come to a close seeing Barbara Mandrell win the CMA Entertainer of the Year. Coal Miner's Daughter would pick up Best Album of the Year. The male vocalist would be handed out to George Jones, while the female vocalist of the year would go to Emmylou Harris. And not to be shocked by anyone, the single and song of the year would be handed out to George Jones and the writers of the song He Stopped Loving Her Today. And Johnny Cash would be inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame.
And I'd like to also say this to all the new artists, that if you're concerned about competition, don't write me off yet, because my dad, Ray Cash, is sitting here tonight. He's 83 years old, and if God lets me live that long, that's 35 more years that I'm going to be out there singing country songs.
With all the big names on the radio and the charts, it was hard for any one new artist to really break out. When three old boys from the state of Alabama landed 2 #1 songs in 1980, no one really paid that much attention. But they would be impossible to ignore in 1981 as they become the most successful band in country music history.